Okay, Rabbi Yerucham Moshe has another mimer on this idea of Simcha during Chanukah. Just to remind ourselves, the Rambam teaches us in Hilchos Chanukah, Parag Gimel, Halacha Gimel, that the Chachamim enacted that on that generation there's going to be 8 days of Chanukah. They're going to start on the 25th of Kislev. Gemei Simcha, Rambam calls it B'Halal, days of happiness. To really explain last time what exactly is the source of the Rambam, that it's a time of Simcha. The Gemara in Shabbos and Chaf Aleph only says Kavim V'Asim Yom Tovim B'Halal V'Hodah, that it's a time of Hal and Hodah. The Gemara itself doesn't mention Simcha, that a person should rejoice, be happy on Chanukah. Where then is the Rambam getting this from? So in the Nusach HaTfilah we say in Al Anisim, Kishamad Malchus Yovana Rashal Amchi Yisrael Ashkichim Sorzechem, that the Greeks that they went up on us and they tried to cause us to forget our learning. The question is, where do we find that the Greeks tried to cause us to forget our learning? Right? In the Midrashim, it's only mentioned that they prevented to stop us from learning. Like the Rambam writes in Hilchos Chanukah in that same exact location. He writes about Yishonik Kishmalchu Yavan Gazru Gazeris Al Shral Batal Daism Lanichos Am Lasik B'Torah Mitzvahs, that they prohibited us from learning and performing mitzvahs. Similarly, the Rokeach writes in his Siddur on the Tefillah of Al Anisim, same exact idea. But where do we find that they tried to cause us to forget our learning? What does that even mean? You put something in someone's brain, cause them to forget only a section of their brain? How does that even work? So the Marsha on the Gemara in Taanis Kaf Ches says that why did the Greeks, they made 2 decrees over here, right? They said you can't bring the korban, the eitzim, the wood, and you can't do the bikurim. Why? Because both of those mitzvahs lead to simcha. The korban for the eitzim, for the wood. So everyone, it was on his day, it was a tremendous simcha. It's like a yontif. Similarly, bikurim, it has to be brought with simcha. They would play the flute over there, right? As well. So therefore they decreed on that because they didn't want us to have happiness. All right. So that's basically what the Marsha over here says, and that's what he says over here. So we clearly see that that before it was possible for them to, right. So in other words, this. Okay, so the Marsha is saying something very technical over here. This happened in the second base of Mikdash. They weren't able to fully prevent us from performing mitzvahs, so they said, okay, we're going to get whatever we could. So therefore they said, you're not going to do the korban eitzim anymore, and you're not going to do bikurim, because those mitzvahs we fulfill with happiness. So therefore they wanted to specifically prevent us from performing those mitzvahs. The question is, what's the pshat over here? Why didn't they want this simcha? Why didn't they want us to be happy over here? So we could explain based on what David HaMelech teaches us in Tehillim Kuf Yud Tes Tes Zayin. And the Alshich explains that this is referring to David HaMelech, that when he was keeping the Torah, that he didn't want to forget it. He was keeping it. How did he do that? By having fun when he learned. Because when a person enjoys something, when he has fun with it, that will make more of an impact. When he's happy about it, that will make more of an impact. It will be in his memory and he won't forget it as much. That's what the El Shach explains, Pshat in this pasuk. Also, the Malbim says it as well. It shouldn't be like something that doesn't have a flavor and it's the norm of forgetting it. That it should be choshev in a person's eyes until he will remember it. Similarly, the Tiferes Yisrael and Avos, Perek Aleph Mishnah Tezayin, in the Boaz Os Aleph says that Seser Shechel Keva, make your Torah learning set. What does that mean? He writes, Hasimcha behadavar atzmo shalomid. When a person has happiness, that will strengthen within him the strength to remember it. That will cause him to remember it more. Similarly, the Kehilas Yaakov, the Stipler, receiver Birchas Beres, Parsha's Lachacha, and I think one year we had this on Parsha. He said that it's known that something that will have an impact on a person is when he is in a state of happiness. He'll remember it for a long amount of time. It will be like chiseled in his brain, so to say, carved in his brain. However, if he doesn't have a yearning for it and he doesn't have a simcha for it, so it's not going to make a big impression in his mind, and he's just going to forget it in a short amount of time. Mela consequently comes out that the way for a person to remember his learning is according to how much he desires it, how much he strives to attain the Torah HaKadosh, and according to the amount of simcha that he has. That will be how much he will remember it. That's what the Stipler says. Similarly, Rav Yaakov Emden in the Sefer Migdalos says there are 15 things that help a person remember Torah. And then he adds, I'm going to add one to this whole list. Learn in a state of happiness. He says this is known and it's recognizable that the Torah is dealing in all precious pearls, gems in the world. All your desires won't equal it. So too, and if a person has that mindset in mind that the Torah is so precious and so dear, then he's not going to forget it. Similarly, the Arizal said that because when he had the simcha, when he was learning Torah, he was zocha for a tremendous amount of levels and a ruach hakodesh. So we clearly see over here that the best thing to help us remember our learning is to be in a state of happiness. Comes out that we should be learning with happiness, and then we will remember it, because that is the natural way, so to say, for us to remember our learning. But there's something else to point out, why learning Torah in a state of happiness is so important, and he'll remember it. It says in Parshas Vayishlach, Lamed Gimel Yud Ches, V'yavo Yaakov Shalom. Yaakov came Shalom, he was complete. What does Rashi explain over there? Shalom B'gufa, Shalom B'mono, he was complete in terms of from his body, he was healthy and financially. Shalom B'toraso, he was also complete in a spiritual manner with his Torah. Shalosh Shochoch Talmudo B'beis Lavan, he didn't forget his learning that he did in the house of Lavan. So what's the Havam? Why would we think that Yaakov would forget his learning that he did in the house of Lavan? So Meir Halevi Soloveitchik explains in the Shuri Rabbeinu, Meir Alatoyer and Bereshis over there, based on a Gemara Megillah Daf of Ukmigir Siyata Deshmaya. For a person to remember his learning, he needs Siyata Deshmaya. Rashi explains that for Ukmigir, so what does that mean? If a person's learning is not going to get forgotten from him, he needs a Siyata Deshmaya. That's what Rashi explains over there in the Gemara. So we clearly see that in order for a person to remember his learning, so that he's not going to forget, he needs a special Siyata Deshmaya. A heavenly assistance. Based on this, Salvation explains, where the Pasuk says, V'yavo Yaakov Shalom, that he was complete. Since he was in the house of Lavan, which is filled with idolatry and kfira, tiflus. So therefore, the Shekhinah, Hashem's presence, maybe didn't rest there because it was such an unholy location. And therefore, when he was involved with Torah, he maybe lost a siyata deshmaya, we would think. That heavenly assistance when he would learn. But you need the siyata deshmaya, and you didn't have the Shekhinah over there. The divine presence of Hashem wasn't there. You needed the Shekhinah in order to have the siyata deshmaya. So therefore, maybe it was fitting that he was going to forget his learning. The chiddush is vayavo shalom. Comes the pasuk. He came complete. He was complete even with his learning. He merited this special gift that he didn't forget his learning all those years. Mamela, consequently, based on this, we could explain that through learning Torah in a state of simcha, a person will be zoicha that he's not going to forget it. Because the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Lamed says that the divine presence will only rest on someone who is not sad, rather in a state of happiness. So we clearly see that a way that a person will merit that the Shekhinah will dwell on him is through him having happiness. Comes out, consequently, if a person won't have the happiness when he's learning, so then the Shekhinah won't be able to dwell by him, and then he's not going to merit the siyata deshmaya to remember his learning, because only through the divine presence of Hashem dwelling on us will we merit the heavenly assistance, and then will we merit not forgetting our learning. Comes out that we could return to the original question as to why the Greeks, they tried to nullify specifically these two mitzvahs. Number one, with the wood, and number two, with the bikurim. These are mitzvahs that are done in a state of happiness, because they wanted to cause us to forget our learning. They were jealous. Klal Yisrael, they know and they comprehend the Torah, and they can't comprehend it, like the Maharal explains. So therefore, they wanted to nullify and uproot the Torah from Klal Yisrael by causing us to forget the Torah. That was through them nullifying this simcha from us, canceling, slashing the simcha, removing it from us. And then that would consequently cause us to forget our learning. Because simcha, happiness, is one of the conditions, one of the main conditions that are needed to cause us to remember our Torah learning. Furthermore, the divine presence of Hashem will not dwell if we don't have the simcha. And then we're not going to have the ukmei girsei, that Hashem will help us remember our learning. And the siyata deshmaya, the heavenly assistance from Hashem. And therefore, since the Shekhinah doesn't dwell by them, then they won't merit the Siyata Dishmaya. That's what they were against. That's why they went after these. That's how they cause us to hashkichim sarasecha, that we should forget our learning. They tried to remove the simcha that we had. That's why the Rambam says that Chanukah is days of simcha. Because since they tried to remove the simcha from us, therefore we specifically have to do the opposite. The victory over the Yevanim, when we were victorious, when the Chashmonaim were victorious, we merited to get free from their decrees and to rest from the way that they pressed us, and to go back, to revert, to return to our life of happiness. Happiness through doing mitzvahs and learning Torah. And then we were able to merit remembering the Torah. And then the divine presence of Hashem is able to return in a complete way, in a way that we're not going to forget it. That's why these are days of happiness. These are days of when we had that simcha that returned to Klal Yisrael. That's his explanation. So we see that Chanukah is a time that we have to be besimcha, and we should try to increase the simcha. Maybe that's one shot in the Nesibos that we have. Get-togethers, family get-togethers. But specifically, simcha through learning Torah, we have to learn more Torah, like the Chassam Sofer would tell us Talmidim to learn more Torah on Chanukah. These are times when the decree of the Yevanim was canceled, the decree of La'ashkicham Zarasecha, that they cause us to forget our learning, which caused us to not be b'simcha, because that's the real state of simcha, through Torah and mitzvahs. And that's the way that we're going to remember it. So we should increase that simcha. That's what we have to do over here. That's what he says. It's time that you could utilize this. Let's provide another answer that he says now in Maimer Zayin. That was Maimer Vav, a summary of it. He says another answer in Maimer Vav, and this is really where he ends his commentary and Torahs on where the simcha comes from. He quotes the same exact Rambam, asks the same question over here. Quotes the same exact Marsha. It's the same exact question. Why were they against simcha? Provides a different answer. Says like this, in Al Anisim we say, in other words, the main target, the main goal of the Greeks was not to kill the Jews. It was to prevent the Yidden from learning Torah and performing mitzvahs. That's why they wanted to remove the simcha that we had. Because when there's simcha, when there's happiness, when a person is learning in a state of happiness and performing mitzvahs in a state of happiness, that's what we call shleimus haTorah v'mitzvahs. That's the completeness of Torah learning and mitzvahs. And that's what we daven every single night when we say Mar. We should be happy when we learn Torah, when we perform mitzvahs, forever. Because Torah and mitzvahs, they're our life, the length of our days, and we should delve into it during the day and during the night. So the explanation is as follows. Simcha, when we perform mitzvahs, is not just the cherry on the cake. It is the cake. All right? It's not just a ma'ila ba'alma, a mere attribute. It is an ikar gadol b'kiyum Torah mitzvahs. It is a main principle when it comes to fulfilling the Torah and mitzvahs. It's not just the cauliflower. This is the meat and the potatoes. The simcha over here. Right? Rabbeinu Yonah writes on Mishlei Daler Chof Aleph, simcha when it comes to the mitzvahs is ikari havoda, from the main priorities of serving Hashem. Also, the psukim, when it talks about the Toichacha in Parshas Kisavo, Chav Ches Mem Zayin, says the reason for the curses is Tachas Asher Lo Yavadatas Hashem Lokecha B'Simcha B'Toiv Levav. Because a person didn't serve Hashem in a state of simcha and with a good heart. So we see from over here that the importance of the obligation that everyone has to serve Hashem and to fulfill the Torah and mitzvahs in a state of happiness and with a good heart. Meaning, to be in a state of happiness, to fulfill the mitzvahs, and that it shouldn't be on us an ol and a toireach, a yoke and a burden. It shouldn't be, oh, we got to do the chakras thing in a minyan. Is it? No. Rabbeinu Bachai writes, Chayiv Adam al hasimcha b'saska b'mitzvahs v'hasimcha b'maisa mitzvah b'pnei atzma. He says over there that a person is obligated to be in a state of happiness when he performs mitzvahs, and he says that the simcha that a person will have is actually an independent mitzvah. Besides from the reward that a person will get when he performs the mitzvah, he will get rewarded for the simcha itself. And therefore, a person will be punished when he does a mitzvah not in a state of happiness. Therefore, he needs to have happiness and kavanah shlema, complete intention. That's what David HaMelech said when he said in Tehillim, Kuf, Parakuf, Pasuk Beis, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. Serve Hashem in a happy way. We find that the Rambam teaches us at the end of Hilchas Lulav Periches Halacha Tezvav that the simcha that a person will have when he performs a mitzvah and when he loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he commanded him, that's an avoida gedoylehi. That's a big way of serving Hashem. V'kol hamonea atzmo mesimcha zoi royally faru yimenu. And says that Rambam, anyone who doesn't have the simcha, he should be punished for it. Shneimar, that pasuk that we just quoted, that you didn't serve Hashem b'simcha tachas asher lo ravad b'simcha tov. Comes along the Magid Mishnah and he explains the Rambam like this: when a person performs a mitzvah, he's obligated to do it in a state of simcha. A person shouldn't just perform a mitzvah because he knows he's obligated to perform it. He's compelled. It's as if he's forced to perform the mitzvah. A parent's forcing him, his spouse is forcing him, his environment around him that he's in is forcing him. No. Rather, says the Magid Mishnah, he is obligated to perform them, the mitzvah with and the mitzvah when he is in a state of happiness when he does it. This is exactly what the Rabbeinu Yonah meant when he said that the simcha and the mitzvah is an ikar for the avodah, the main principle, the main dish of serving Hashem, so to say, the main priority. That's what the Rabbeinu Bachai writes about when in his Psicha to Parshas Nasa, that the simcha when a person fulfills a mitzvah is the shleimus of avodah, completeness of serving Hashem. And he says, Yischayev Adam lihiyoso sameach b'mitzvahs kishiyasos. A person has to be besimcha, like the pasuk says that we just quoted, and the pasuk gives us Hashem besimcha. And he explains simcha shleimus avodah, it's the completeness of the avodah. Similarly, the Ramachal in his Mesilas Yesharim and Perik Yud Tes writes about this as well, and he says, true simcha should be in a person's heart that he knows that he's able to merit serving Hashem, to learn Torah, to perform mitzvahs with the true completeness. And Hashem complained when this condition was lacking, when they didn't have simcha. Shneimar, that pasuk, etc. So we clearly see from everything that we just said that simcha, when we fulfill a mitzvah, is not just the cherry on the cake, rather it is the cake. It is the main part of avodah that a person, main part of serving Hashem. And therefore we need to be in a state of happiness that we're zocha for this, that we merit this. That's what we see from all of that. How could we not be in a state of simcha when we realize that we're able to fulfill mitzvahs and learn Torah? But it's even more than that, that the payment, the reward for the mitzvah, we will get rewarded when we perform mitzvahs in accordance to how much happiness we have when we perform the mitzvah. The Sefer Charedim writes about this idea. Writes about this, a Sefer Charedim in the Hagdama to the Mitzvah's Oath Test. According to the amount of happiness that one has when one performs a mitzvah, he will get repaid. That will be his reward. So we clearly see that it depends how much simcha we put in will be our reward. Furthermore, we find in the Orchos Tzadikim in Shar Simcha something amazing. A person should be in a state of happiness when he learns Torah. And when he performs the mitzvahs, he should be happy in his heart that he's meriting, that he's going to merit to be a servant of Hashem. Asher b'nei Mailo yishtachvu lo, etc. V'chol ha'oiseh ha'mitzvah b'simcha yesh lo schar eluf yados yoser mimi sha'mitzvahs olav l'masa. Someone who performs mitzvahs in a state of happiness will get rewarded 1,000. Yes, 1,000 times more than someone who does the mitzvahs and he's, this is so annoying, this mitzvah. What a burden. What a nuisance. The guy who says it's a nuisance versus the guy who does it b'simcha, the guy who does the mitzvah with happiness, he will get rewarded 1,000 times more. Think about that next time you think about not doing a mitzvah in a state of happiness. Sar elef yados, 1,000 hands, 1,000 times. No, this is the Orchos Sadikim in the Shara Simcha. State mafurish in the Orchos Sadikim. So we clearly see that through performing the mitzvahs within a state of happiness, we're at a 1,000 times situation of an increase of reward. Why? Because when a mitzvah is done, when Torah is being done and a person's happy to do it, he's at the next level. He's at a different league compared to the person who does it just like an obligation, just like it's a yoke, he's being forced. Like the fellow that is kechoiv v'ol v'kfiyah. He's in a different league, this fellow. Something else amazing from the Sefer Charedim. The Mishnah Berurah actually quotes this in Siman Tofrei Shamach Tes Sifkot and Yud, Sukkos over there, but the great level that a person could achieve. Or is this actually the end of Hilchos Yom Kippur? Tofrei Shamach Tes, yeah. The great level that a person could achieve when he fulfills a mitzvah simcha. And he says about the Arizal, everything that the Arizal achieved, all the Ruach HaKodesh, all of the Kabbalah, the Chachmas HaTorah, the Seidos HaTorah, why'd that come? B'schar shayasameach b'siyas kol mitzvah simcha gedoylein tachlis. That's because he had a tremendous amount of happiness whenever he learned Torah before mitzvahs. This is in the Mishnah Berurah. Quote the Sefer Charedim, it's made it to the Mishnah Berurah. And he says that pasuk, etc. So that's what he says over here. Similarly, the Pele Yoetz writes in Erech Simcha that the reward that a person will get when he learns Torah and does mitzvahs in a state of happiness is who will merit achieving the wisdom of the Torah, understanding it in a complete way. And then he quotes the Arizal as well, same exact idea. Hakol haya b'shvil shayasameach simcha rabba. The Arizal merited what he merited because he had a tremendous amount of simcha when he learned Torah and when he fulfilled ubekiyum shu mitzvah yoysim and moitzei shlarav. When he fulfilled any mitzvah, it's like he just found a treasure that was worth hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars. Torah is even worth more. Mitzvahs are even worth more. So we clearly see the importance when we perform mitzvahs, when we learn Torah, that it should be done in a state of happiness. That it has the ability to uplift a person himself. It could uplift us spiritually. And then we can merit levels, ad kadei kach, even Ruach HaKodesh, like the Arizal. It makes a person holier, makes a person greater. Like the Arizal himself, we see what he merited over here. The Orchos Sadikim, Shaleach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ruach HaKodesh B'kirbo the Orch HaChaim. The Orchos Sadikim writes that Hashem will send him, he will give him Ruach HaKodesh. Umagala lahem rozim v'chidushim shalmayla, and it will be revealed to him secrets and chidushim from above. Now we could come back and tie this into why the Greeks specifically wanted to cause Klal Yisrael, cause us not to perform mitzvahs and learn Torah in a state of happiness. They prevented us from performing the mitzvah with the eitzim and the bikurim, because those two mitzvahs were done in a state of happiness. They didn't want us, really, they didn't want us to do any Torah mitzvahs. They wanted to cause us. So that's why they went after Simcha in particular. Because the Simcha, when we do a mitzvah, is part of the mitzvah. is part of the main part of the avodah. Mi'ikari avodah v'shleimus avodah is the main part of serving Hashem. And we see we're talking about a difference of 1,000 times getting rewarded. And through the simcha, the gates of wisdom and ruach hakodesh will be opened. Therefore, the Greeks, they wanted to come and they wanted to nullify that, eradicate the simcha, in order that we won't be performing the mitzvahs as they should be performed, and we won't tap into that special reward. Comes out. This is why we could explain now why the Rambam says that Chanukah are days of happiness. They wanted to get the simcha away from us. It's that simple. It all connects, which is a main part of their decrees, what they wanted to prevent us from doing. So when the Chashmonaim were victorious on the Greeks, so then we were able to merit again the simcha. We were able to tap back into that. Therefore, these days are days when we should be in a state of happiness, because that is part of the geula, of the redemption that we had. That's part of us being free from the Greeks. That's part of the Toikif Yeshua Megalus Yavon, the strength of the salvation from the Greek exile. Then now we have the free will that we're able to tap into that happiness again. So therefore, it's fitting for us in these days to increase our simcha from the mitzvah, which is fulfilling the mitzvahs in a state of completeness. That we should now be elevated and ascend to these higher levels. So we clearly see that Chanukah is a time when we should be happy when it comes to learning and performing mitzvahs. Especially towards mitzvahs, this is a time when we should work on our happiness when we perform mitzvahs as well. To realize what we're meriting over here. To give Hodah and Hallel during these 8 days of Chanukah. Ashreinu ma tavchalkeinu ma noim goraleinu ma yafa, you should say. How great our lot is, our portion. That we're able to perform the Taryag mitzvahs. We're able to have a tremendous amount of simcha. To daven that Hashem should have mercy on us and should awaken us. We should daven that we should now have simcha. We should be happy to perform mitzvahs and to learn Torah. And then we're going to get to a completeness with our way of how we serve Hashem in a tremendous amount of reward, and to ascend from one level to the next until it could even go up to Ruach HaKodesh. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha b'oy lefanu b'irnana. Sasa noichi alim rosecha kemoitzi sharav. We have to be happy we're able to perform mitzvahs. Tachas asher lo avadas emokecha b'simcha. Especially when we perform the special mitzvah of lighting the menorah. We should light the menorah and be so happy that we're able to do it. And then we'll be zoicha to have that high level that we should be getting when we perform mitzvahs. That's the idea of why simcha. I think a beautiful idea. He really brings it together. All right, mitzvah Hashem. Next time it will be Mamshet. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Oh,
Yeah.